All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today on this beautiful June day. I think it was the day after the summer solstice. So kind of strange that we're already in the days are getting shorter now. No, we can't think that way, right? No, that's good. But anyway, thank you for joining us.
Summer.
Yeah, I know. Like summer hasn't even felt like it's kicked in yet.
Yeah.
So we've got some great things to talk about today, I mentioned. First, we've got some updates on WordPress and our web services stuff, some of the things that we've been up to recently. Want to talk about some summer maintenance tasks. One sort of last final mention about the Google Analytics migration. And Al's gonna talk about a lot of the exciting digital accessibility stuff that's been happening on campus recently. And as usual, if you have questions as we go along, don't feel like you need to hold those till the end. Feel free to drop them in the chat or just fire up your mic and ask the question whenever you feel like it. So. Okay, with that, so and now feel free to jump in on any of these, but we just kind of wanted to update folks on some of the news and updates, some of the things, certainly not everything, but try to pick out some of the relevant things that might be useful for folks to know. So we continue to do lots of tuning of the CALS v4 theme, as well as the blocks for those of you that are using the block editor. Just a lot of tuning there, especially kind of after the UW font update that we did in the spring. There were just, and there continues to be some adjustments just with switching to those fonts. A lot of the font weighting, everything, the spacing, things were just different. So we're continually kind of improving those and kind of tuning that up, especially in addition to like just functionality and blocks as well. We've also got some planning. We're kind of always continuing on the lookout for getting feature requests for folks for new blocks, different layouts or patterns. So if you have any of those, definitely send those to us at our web support email. It kind of helps us in our planning efforts for new blocks and patterns. One exciting thing too, and I'll talk a little bit more a little bit later as well, is we have a new site owner role that Al basically got that implemented here very recently. And basically what that will be able to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about our reporting here in a minute, but it's basically a site admin in terms of the role itself. It's a site admin role, but it just gives a name or a title of site owner, and that will help us in sort of determining who is the point contact for a given website. And that'll just help us improve our communication when we have different things like the font updates recently we needed to communicate out. And a lot of times, there's multiple site admins or content managers. Sometimes those user roles switch over time and shift. And so it's difficult for us to know who the active current sort of point contact is. So I'll show that a little bit here, how you can go about doing that, but we'll probably be reaching out to website owners and content managers to kind of start defining that role. And again, I'll kind of show you that later, how you can do that. Kind of under the infrastructure, one thing also we've been able to implement is a new plugin for multi-site querying and reporting. So that, again, kind of in conjunction with the site owner, that helps us kind of quickly pull a list of that site owner role. So if we need to get an important communication out just to site owners, we can do that. The new tool also helped us with the Google Analytics 4 update. We were able to quickly query all of the 300 plus sites on our platform to see who had Google Analytics configured. Did they have the new or the old tracking ID? So that really helped. It helped us a lot. It sped our work up a lot in that case. So we're hoping to build that out as well, just to help improve our communication with site owners and content managers, and kind of just to really be able to understand, what's on the platform, and help, increase our support for the platform. So that was pretty exciting. Just a couple of recent updates as well. I think most folks have our CALS 2015 theme or the CALS v4 theme, but a few have the UW theme. And so we've recently updated that to the 1.24, as well as we did a pretty major upgrade to WordPress 6.2, I think back in like March, and now we're already up to 6.22. So WordPress is just, they're flying with their updates. They're doing a lot of cool stuff, improving the block editor itself, the thing that we develop on to create the blocks and that experience. They're moving into basically block-based themes, which we won't talk about now, but they're just doing a lot of cool stuff that we're keeping an eye out on, and trying to make sure we're staying current with everything that's happening in the WordPress platform. Al, did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
No, well, I think you covered a lot of great things there. I'll just add that we had, we've seen a bit of a sort of an increase, if you will, in folks that are looking to update as well their sites. So we're also going to be actively reaching out, trying to just work with everybody to make sure that if you've had a site for a while, perhaps, that is sitting on maybe an older version of the CALS theme or something to that effect, we want to work with you to help get everything updated so you feel like everything is given a refresh. We worked with the CALS lab, for example, internally more within our IT unit earlier today. And it was actually a great reminder as to what things you sort of miss out on when you're not on the latest version. So things like new abilities and how you can showcase faculty and staff or other individuals in your directory, things to that nature. So I would just add to that, add to that, just, if you are noticing you're in that role of, maintaining a site and you're interested in this, reach out. We'd happy to get this going as well. The only thing I'll mention too is that, I like to just mention, Mark, as you had about the updates, because I think there's every so often you get that sort of question from individuals in terms of, well, do I need to be worrying about updates? And we like to make sure that we don't inundate site owners with the technical details, but we always keep things up to date. However, if any of you or anyone in your groups are really wanting to hear more about that technical information, we're always happy to share. So just reach out again if you'd like to hear more about that.
Yep, that's a good point, Al. Thanks for mentioning those things. And then just a quick mention, the kind of another shout out to the CALS v4 kitchen sink demo, kind of based on what Al was just saying. If you're say still in the 2015 and you're not sure what maybe the CALS v4, what you might be able to do with that, that kind of is a demo page we're working on. We're still sort of building that out. We've dropped a lot of the different blocks and some of the things you can do with the block editor and within the new CALS v4 theme, just to see some of the additional flexibilities it gives you in creating nice visual page layouts. So we will continue to kind of build that out along with our documentation, which is also still on our roadmap. And then we'll be looking for probably the August, September timeframe for the next CALS community webinar. So, but just kind of put that in there, but we'll be sending out a communication with more information about that through the newsletter and eCALS like we usually do. So, okay, so first topic here. So summer website maintenance stuff. So, summer's always a good time to do some of this stuff. And so we just kind of wanted to highlight a few things that it's good for site admins and content managers to kind of do, at least if not once a year, but maybe, quarterly, depending how active your site is. So one of those things is kind of with the user list, right? And I'm going to demo a couple of these things. But so as you may or may not know, a site admin does have the ability to add and remove users, change their role on the site. Most most site users have either site admin or editor. Those are our two most common roles. So just kind of a plug for again, this is a site admin task. I believe content managers have access to the ability to do that. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so, right? I've never logged in as an editor, or rarely, so I always forget.
Yeah, no, editors won't have that. Right.
Yeah,
I think it's primarily a site administrator. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
same with adding individuals as well. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So I'm just going to pop over here so I've got our training site. We just have a few users for a demo. But just as a quick refresher, if you ever need to add a new user that comes in, because you have new students coming in and out, new staff members, new responsibilities for staff. If you're site admin, if under your role it says administrator over here next to your name, then you would have the user menu here, and all you have to do is go to add by net ID, and then you'll just need another net ID. So the UW net ID, and then you just paste that in there, and then pick the role that you want them. Again, typically anybody just managing content and the editor is sufficient. They can add, edit, remove content, pages, and posts. They can pretty much do everything they need. If they need to do a little bit more, like work with gravity forms or some other elements on the page, navigation or customization, things like that, then they would want to be a site administrator. So you just pick their role and add them, and then they'll show up on the list. Likewise, if you need to change anybody's permissions, let's say a common task is you've added somebody as an editor, and then they now need to take on some more they need some more permissions to do some things. You can just hover over their name, and you'll see the options here, and you can click edit. So I've got our sort of CALS test user here who is currently an editor. And I can click and edit there. You can change a couple, several things. And then one of those is the role right here. And then you can simply make them an administrator if they need to. Likewise, the site owner, the new exciting role. So this is also how you can change an existing administrator to that site owner, or anybody who's going to kind of think of it, site owner as a point of contact, right? Your primary point of contact. And you can do multiple if you want, but it's now just an option, right, in the roles as site owner. And again, it's functionally equivalent to the site administrator. It's simply Al found a really cool way just to be able to slap a new label on that existing permission role and add it to the list. All right. So that kind of takes care of, and then likewise, if you need to remove anybody, and removing is a good thing just for security, people come and go. So, just try to pick a couple of times a year at least, just glance through your list. And if folks have moved on, it's definitely okay just to remove them from the site. It's just keeps things, tidy and secure. So that's definitely kind of a good audit action to do from time to time. All right. So that kind of takes care of auditing. Then just kind of some mentions for content managers or site admins as well. Just, some folks are in their website daily, weekly. Some, your content doesn't change that much, but it's always just a good idea to, some things to check your contact info page. Particularly if you had a single person point of contact and maybe they moved on. So maybe update that contact information page. Service accounts can also be good for that. Then you don't always have to do that. Just check your contact information. If your homepage, if you've set it up with, if you haven't used, say, one of our cool remote content blocks that you can sort of pull dynamic content from eCals or things like that. If you have more static news items, check and make sure those aren't too old. Maybe take the opportunity to update those with something happening in the summer or things that are coming in the fall. And then likewise, same with people information, but sort of people information that's outward facing on say your contact page, or if you're using our directory plugin, just kind of go through. Always a good time to go through and make sure those are up to date. Add and remove staff or students that have joined or departed. So just kind of taking a moment to remind folks of some of those nice maintenance tags to keep everything up to date on your websites. Any questions about that before I move on? I'll just pause for a sec and look at the chat. All pretty straightforward, but just good to mention. We all need that. All need the reminding. So just want to say a few more words about the Google Analytics transition. So again, and it's now we're about a week and a half out. So July 1st is when this big transition is taking place. Any existing universal analytics properties, so any of the measurement IDs with a UA at the start, those will stop collecting data. So if you have one of those attached to your website, it will stop collecting data on July 1st. Okay, so what we've done is kind of the update. What we've done so far is basically we've updated all of the Google Analytics properties to GA4 and the websites in which we have access to the Google Analytic dashboard property. Mostly that's CALS admin related sites, some department sites, and some center sites. We've also communicated out to all site owners who still had UA IDs configured. We did that most recently. We've done it about 3 or 4 waves, but we've done it most recently in early June. And again, we're hoping with that site owner, as we can get folks to select that, that'll give us a better point of contact, because it is difficult for us to, sometimes there's admins listed on a site that are no longer at in that group. So they sometimes go out to somebody that's not even there. So anyway, we have communicated out to everyone about the transition, and we've also created a post on how to do that, how to set up a GA4 to migrate, and how to connect it. Just maybe a snapshot in time. So as of June 20, just to give folks an idea of what we're talking about here. So of our 302 active sites, about 85 sites had Google Analytics set up. And again, we were able to quickly pull this from our new cool multi-site reporting plugin. So as of June 20th, only 12 sites were still left. So that had not yet updated by the site admin. And those are ones that we did not have access to the Google Analytics property. So if you have questions if you do self-questions, so there's only 12 sites left. So that's good. We've pretty much gotten almost everybody. So really, okay, if you may be one of those 12, kind of go check. How can you go and check? Well, determine if you have Google Analytics 4 or not, and then you can also then check your WordPress website, and I'll remind you how to do that. So basically, you're looking for an old UA tracking ID. If you do see that, then you do need to make some steps, okay? So how do you check? In the CALS 2015 CALS v4 theme, they're basically in the same location in our theme. So you would log into your dashboard. And again, you do have to be a site admin to do this. But you go to Appearance, Customize, and then in that menu option, you'll find an Analytics. And you click on that menu option. And then the top option there is for Google Analytics. If you don't see a tracking ID, that means you don't have any Google Analytics set up for that site, or at least you're not tracking anything. If you see a UA code there, then you need to do something, okay? So I'll skip that for a second. And what do we need to do? Well, we created a page on exactly what you need to do. So this is, we've sent this out in our eCALS newsletter, as well as our own newsletter in June, and the links will also be available here if you need to find that. But basically, this will walk you through the whole process. So this walks you through the Google part, where you log into your analytics dashboard and do the migration. So that's what the first steps are here. And then that's part one. Part two is then adding that tracking ID to your website to replace the old tracking ID. So that's the second part here. So we got that there for you. So really, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. This was just to mention, like, I wanted to highlight this, like, folks were getting these emails and it made it sound like Google would take care of everything, but they were only taking care of that part one. They were going to create the GA4, but you still would need to add that to your site for it to be collecting data. So if you got one of those, just know that that was only part one, not the actually connecting to your site. So anyway, got some resources here, a link to our documentation, and that is about it for the Google Analytics, unless there are any questions.
Yeah, I'll be curious if anyone has. I don't know, looking just at the folks who are able to make it today, if any of you have something that needed to be adjusted. I want to say just off the top of my head, Mark, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think CALS Global might be one of those groups that may have control of their own analytics. So I don't know, Julia, for example, if this is something that you've heard from Mark already, or if it's something that we can help with more specifics on, let us know. Happy to do that.
Yeah, that's great, Al. Thanks for bringing that up.
Oh, yep, sounds good. She'll follow up. So excellent. Yeah, we can help with that.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Well, with that, I will go ahead and pass it on. Oops, sorry, Al. We both advanced.
Oh, no, that's all right.
Double advanced.
All right. Should I dive in here? So basically, I'll just cover this relatively quick, I think, but this is a great opportunity for anyone here that has like a lot of detailed questions on this to ask. So for those that may not be familiar, there is a new UW digital accessibility policy that will be going into effect starting July 1. And that new UW policy has been in the works for a number of years now at this point. And its primary focus is to effectively update the UW digital accessibility policy, which did exist before then, and basically referred to what is called 508 standards, and now to update this to technically what is called the WCAG 2.1 AA standards. And that's a whole, if you're not familiar with digital accessibility in those standard levels, effectively just means being more specific, and it just means that we are addressing more forms of media. There goes my automatic lights. And we are taking on a couple of additional different sort of details to accessibility as part of this. So what this whole policy really means, though, for campus is that the policy itself will be something that the Center for User Experience, for those that may or may not have worked with that group before, centrally on campus, is they are going to be trying to sort of be the responsible party for that and sort of guide campus through getting this done. And they will be reaching out to representatives in each school, college, division, unit to sort of facilitate seeing how, sort of shepherding people through getting this new policy applied and getting things up to date. So the representatives within CALS as of this moment are myself, Mark, and two other individuals here up in CALS that will be helping with trying to just make sure we keep an active eye out for questions, communications. And our goal is just not only to help answer your questions as best we can directly and help with that sort of thing, but also be that point of contact to know that if you have a question that is sort of beyond us, that we know exactly where to direct you to. So with contacts within the Center for User Experience or with the Office of Compliance or McBurney, those are all different areas we might be able to direct you to. And in part with that, there'll be scheduled office hours to ask additional specific questions on both the policy as well as specific media. All sorts of things will be made available. So there'll be a lot of resources for this. And I think a couple of things I want to cover is that, when we say it goes into effect July 1, it's really important to keep in mind that it's just sort of a start, right? So you kind of see from this timeline here on the slide that the idea is that for this next year, the focus should be hopefully on documents. So it should be looking at PDFs, Word documents, Excel to some extent, but that's not as common on the web, and looking at those for any sort of correlation between high volume usage as well as any needs for those documents to potentially need some level of updates. There are going to be potential situations, I'm sure, and we're expecting to address those where a document maybe can't be updated, or there may be other scenarios where that document needs to stay in its current form to some degree or another. And the answers to that and how this affects being compliant with the policy really just means making sure that we know how to have an accommodation process outlined so we know exactly what to do. It doesn't mean that, something, we have to go through every PDF you've ever created. That's not really as realistic, but this will be part of how that comes together. So as you'll see here through the rest of the timeline, there's a focus on LMSs the year after, multimedia, websites, web apps, and so forth. And so this is really going to take 7 years to get through, and we'll find ourselves in a good space to apply this and implement things. The good news is that, for example, at least from a website standpoint, while we're working on additional tools and resources for content managers like yourselves to be able to know exactly if you've added something that maybe not be quite as accessible, 95 to 98% of what you already do, if it's using one of the CALS themes or UW theme, is already made accessible. So it kind of gets you a long way there. So it's really only groups that might be doing something exceptionally custom that we would have to reach back out to and work with to figure that sort of thing out. So if any of you have additional questions or have heard about this, there's been a lot of different communications that have gone out from a whole bunch of different areas. And if any of you would like to know what is the Digital Accessibility Liaison group, what are other ways they can get involved, please let us know. We're happy to help with that. There's a community of practice that we manage as well that will be available to folks that are looking to just be able to have just a better ear to the ground, really, right? Understand kind of what this means. So I guess with that, it's kind of sort of a large sort of swath of information all at once. But if anyone here does have questions, and thanks, Mark, for putting the links in chat, please let us know. We want to make sure no one feels sort of intimidated by this new policy. I think there's a lot of ways that I think it'll be easy to address this sort of thing. So. I'll see if there's any questions outstanding in chat or what have you, but I think for the most part, yeah, this will be relatively, hopefully a relatively straightforward approach for a lot of folks. So if it's helpful though, what we can do is there's some additional resources and recordings we have. And if you all would like, we'll send those out. We can communicate those out maybe in the next newsletter, include some of those resources so you can kind of see what's happening in that space and maybe what sort of things you'll need to do. There'll be a more formal documented guide on sort of how to proceed with things that we'll be publishing later on.
All right, thanks, Al. So
yeah.
Any other questions? I would just make a plug for like what Al mentioned. And again, we can send those out, but there have been some very good presentations at both the digital accessibility community practice and the UW design community recently on various aspects of this. And one recently was making PDFs accessible, sort of to highlight the document deadline coming out. So they've been very, very, very useful.
I think, Mark, one thing we might want to consider too is whether or not we spend potentially a future meetup with this audience just to talk a little bit more about specifics, like just walk through one or two and then help address any questions at that point. So we'll have to see, depending what other content we have to cover. So
yeah, I think that would probably be a good just to highlight some of those things you can do on a web page. Yeah.
The community of practice itself is it's very pretty dynamic. There's already over 300 people across campus as members of that community of practice. So another great space. It's just in teams, so it's a really nice, people are used to that at this point. So it's a really good medium for sort of jumping in and be able to ask a question and get a lot of quick answers. So I'm going to find that link. I'll put that in chat too. So
yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, and you're all welcome to join. It's complete. It's open to anyone, and they have fairly regular web conference meetings, but also what's really useful is the Teams channel, because folks will pose questions, issues they're having, and people have been really really, really helpful on jumping in and helping. So. All right.
Great. Well, I think, does that cover everything? I'm trying to remember from the first slide.
I think that's about everything. Yeah, we kind of flew through stuff, but that's okay. We can give folks time back if there aren't any other questions. Then we'll go ahead and adjourn. And we again thank you for coming, and definitely don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you.
Excellent.
For the there we go. So.